Hello there and welcome to Shuttlebay 4. We chatted to Alec Peters. Some celebrate him as a champion of fan films, a good citizen of Star Trek who's invested a lot of his own personal time and resources into enriching the Star Trek universe and producing Axanar, one of the greatest fan films ever created. And some think he's a grifter, the head of a vanity project who spaffed donor money on Warhammer and Sex Toys for his underground sex cult, whilst producing Axanar, one of the greatest fan films ever created. We talk CBS lawsuits, fan film guidelines, financial prudence, space lakes, and of course we had to ask him about those purple dildos.
Strap in, watch this.
Hi, Alec.
Hey everyone, good to see you guys.
Good to see you.
I shouldn't do
Good
that.
to finally talk. Yeah. Why not?
Trademarked. So the loose plan for this really is a bit of a Q&A. Most of the questions are probably going to be about Axanar, obviously. But some of the things that we do want to ask you about, because it would be remiss for us not to ask, will be about some of the comments that we've had on our Facebook page and some on the YouTube videos. Some of which, to be honest, are quite strange. So I'm quite looking forward to hearing about them.
This AMA was kind of born out of we have a look at some topics or episodes or movies of Star Trek on a weekly basis, and we critique that. And we had a look at fan films and Axanar in general, and that video got a lot of attention and quite strange comments. And I think I was asking you, Alec, about something different. Someone nicked my jackets that had some Axanar patches on there, and you very kindly replaced those. And I started talking to you about the comments, and you kindly said, look, if you want me to come on your podcast and clear some of this up, I will. And that was very, very gracious. We kind of snapped that up. We're all different levels of knowledge about Axanar in general, fan films and things like that. And we were hoping that you could kind of clear up some of the history of Axanar and some of the burning questions that people have. Are you okay to do that, Alec?
Yeah, of course. Absolutely.
The first thing really that we wanted to ask was just about your background, really. The prelude to Axanar, I suppose.
Yeah, tell us about yourself, Alec. Tell us about your history, your background.
So, I'm a Star Trek fan since the original series was on TV. I was born in 1960, so I was 6 years old when Star Trek came on TV. And I remember it very clearly. I remember there was a teaser trailer. It was like an animation of the word Star Trek carved into a mountain. And it said coming this fall. And I remember that. And so I remember seeing, all the original episodes. It was originally on NBC. And then once the 3 years were up, it went into syndication on WPIX Channel 11. So a lot of Star Trek fans, including Richard Hatch, who was in New York for, he was on, I think, General Hospital or Days of Our Lives, or one of the soap operas. Doug Drexler is from that area. Jonathan Lane, who runs Fan Film Factor. Anyone who grew up in the New York metropolitan area watched Star Trek on WPIX at 6 o'clock p.m. every day. So that's how, by the time Next Generation came on, we had all seen every episode of TOS like 20 times. And my first convention, which I still have the program somewhere around here, I still have the program from my very first convention, which was at the Roosevelt Hotel, and George Takei was there.
Oh,
and,
my.
Walter Koenig was there.
What year would that have been in, your first convention?
My God, that was like 82.
Oof.
Let's see, 82, 83. It was right around there. Maybe it was 83. And then I went away to law school at University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, which is gorgeous. And somehow I got involved with, I went to a convention down there where Mark Leonard was the guest. I got hooked up with the Starfleet fan group, which is like the largest Star Trek fan club in the world. And we now have a chapter, the USS Ares chapter, which anyone can join if you want to be part of the USS Ares crew. We have a group on Facebook, the USS Ares NCC 1650. But I was a member way back in the 80s, back when they used to send you out their communique, which was their newsletter. It was a cute little booklet form, which of course I kept. I have them all. Actually, one of my oldest Star Trek friends, Alex Rosenzweig, who's still a member of Starfleet, we hooked up years later. I found him on Facebook, and I was like, do you remember me? And I still have like my original typewritten letter correspondence with him because he was involved in like the technical blueprints and everything. So anyway, I was a fan. And back when I was in law school was when I first wrote my first story of Garth of Izar. Then in 2006, were the very famous Star Trek auction at Christie's, where Paramount sold like 1,000 lots of Star Trek memorabilia. Because by that time, CBS and Paramount were done with Star Trek, right? Enterprise had been canceled. Les Moonves hated Star Trek. And they had like 6 warehouses all over the valley out in Los Angeles. And they needed to get rid of this stuff. So they sold 1,000 lots. So I went to that auction. I won a Kirk costume. I won a Cisco costume. Then I got a couple Tasha Yars, right?
A couple of Tasha Yar items.
Yeah, I had her costume and I had her dress uniform, I think.
Yeah.
And so I started collecting Star Trek props and costumes. That's the Polaron emitter that Cisco uses in the episode where they become Klingons. I can show you this.
It was.
That's Cisco's computer right there.
Oh, wow.
That's his USS Horizon model.
Oh.
And back that's just a skydiver. If you're a UFO fan, you Brits should be UFOs fans.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Because I'm a huge UFO fan.
Affirmative.
I'm such a geek about UFO. But anyway, I became like the expert on Star Trek props and costumes. We were all collecting. It was big. I wrote a blog about it for years. And then they came around, Battlestar Galactica was ending. And everyone was like, well, who's going to do the auctions for that? And I was like, let me give it a shot. And I contacted NBC through Richard Hatcher, who was a very dear friend of mine, got me in touch with the producer at Battlestar, who put me in touch with NBC. I pitched him. I got the gig. Basically, if you talk to anyone in the prop and costume collecting business, the Star Trek auction is the greatest prop and costume auction of all time, followed by the Battlestar Galactica auctions. We did 2 of them. There was a lot of fun. As a matter of fact, Ron Moore was a dead set against the auctions because he thought it was going to be like a garage sale. Ron Moore, who created the new Battlestar Galactica, of course. It was interesting because he was against it. And when we went, I got to spend 3 months on the set of Battlestar Galactica while they were shooting the movie The Plan, right after they wrapped the series and then shot The Plan. So that was the 3 months we were up there. And when we got up there, it was funny because it was like we kind of got a cold shoulder. Like the prop department wanted nothing to do with us. Ken Harlow, the prop master, wanted nothing to do with what we were doing. By the end of the 3 months, we were everyone's best friend. Everyone loved us because, like the prop master, they were shooting The Plan, which was all flashbacks. So we're cataloging everything for the auctions that's in the prop room. And Santino Borelli, the assistant prop master, would call me up and say, Alec, I need this prop from season 2, episode blah, blah. I go, okay. And we'd find it and we'd run it up to the set. And so by the end of the 3 months, they thought we walked on water. Ron Moore wanted everything thrown in a warehouse so he could revive Battlestar Galactica at a later date. And I love Ron Moore, by the way. So none of this is a knock on Ron. So we do our first auction, and it was set up in a building at the Pasadena Convention Center, and it was beautiful. We had the Raptor, the full-size Raptor, and the full-size Mark 7 in the center, and on the outside you had costumes on the right, props in the front, set deck on the left. So it was really impressive. And you'd walk in, and then behind that was the area where the auction happened. On the Thursday, which was preview day, someone comes over and says, Alec, Ron Moore is here. And I'm like, oh, shit. So he has our catalog, and he's looking at the set deck. And we had everything, at beautiful signage. I mean, when we do something, it's like, it was top notch. And so I walk over to Ron, and I go, hey, Ron, my name's Alec Peters. I'm the guy running the auction. I own ProtWorks. And he goes, hey, and I go, look, I know you were dead set against this auction. I said, but I want you to understand, we're huge fans of the show. And what we see ourselves doing is being the archivists of Battlestar Galactica. He just had a smile on his face, and he said, this is amazing. And I was like, oh, we're all set. And so after Battlestar Galactica, we did Stargate. We did 2 amazing auctions. Those are the best auction catalogs in history, by the way. We did Star Trek in 2010. Licensed by CBS in conjunction with CBS, selling the assets of the Star Trek exhibition from the Hilton. So that was 2010. So when CBS then later on sues us, just remember that I was a licensee selling their stuff for them, clearing out a warehouse of all the Star Trek exhibition stuff, running a warehouse sale for them, archiving their stuff for them, doing everything at no cost to them, and they wind up suing me. So obviously I have choice words for what I think of them. But yeah, let me show you here. Since I have them here, I'll show you our, so this was a Battlestar Galactica. This is the catalog.
Oh yeah.
Cut corners, you'll notice. This was the second one. We did the Iron Man auction. So this is the Iron Man auction catalog. Also, and our catalogs also have interviews with all the cast and crew. And then we had the Stargate, which are, we have 2 Stargate auctions, that one and this one. And again, just beautiful. They're amazing. They're like my pride and joy. We had a great team. The mother of my godsons, Damaris Deegan, did all the layout and everything, and we had great photographers, and we had a great crew doing those. And then I started working on Axanar, and that came around because we had the TOS chair from Trials and Tribulations.
Oh,
okay. So they had made a TOS chair for Avery Brooks to stand in front of when he was shooting his scene that they composited in. It needed some restoration. And so I called James Cawley, who at the time was doing Star Trek New Voyages. So back in the early aughts, you had Star Trek New Voyages. Kurtzman, no. But that's okay, right? I'm just, Exeter really was like the first of that next generation fan film.
Yeah.
They really were the groundbreakers. And then New Voyagers came in, and they kind of carried the flag throughout the early aughts. And then Star Trek Continues took over, and they went through the first, 2000. No, I think they finished up in 2015, maybe 2016.
So there's a clear link there. So you went to an auction, you won some lots, you started your collection of real Star Trek stuff, having been a fan since you were 6, and that got you into the prop situation. And then you thought, right, okay, I can do this. So then you put on some auctions yourself, and then that went from Battlestar Galactica all the way through to a Star Trek auction where you had a chair that needed restoring. And that's how you moved into the realm of fan films, because you were contacting these guys and saying, this chair needs a bit of restoration. What can you do with it? That kind of thing.
That led me to James Cawley, and James, he gave me the information I needed on the chair. And then we started talking, and I said to him, I had just bought the original Garth of Izar costume that Steve Einat wore in Whom Gods Destroy. Paid $5,000 for it. And it was one of my 2 holy grails. I'll tell you about the other one later. So I said, by the way, James, I got the original Garth of Izar costume. And we start talking about that. And we start talking about what a great character Garth of Izar was and how they never did anything with that character. And God, he was Kirk's hero, right? I mean, this guy was Kirk before Kirk. The guy charted more star systems than any captain, won the Battle of Axanar. It was books taught at the Academy. And so at the time, Star Trek 2009 had just come out, the first JJ movie. And James Cawley didn't like it, right? Because it wasn't TOS Star Trek. And so he was doing an episode of Star Trek New Voyages called Origins. And if you haven't watched Star Trek New Voyages, you should. That Star Trek Continues there. And definitely Star Trek Exeter, the Tresorian intersection, it's called. It's just a phenomenal fan film. So they were doing Origin, and James was like, we're doing Origins, which is Kirk at the Academy. I go, oh, that's cool. And he said, well, that was the time that Garth was at his height. I go, yeah. He goes, well, we should write him into the script. I said, you should do that. And he said, well, you should come play him. I wanted to write the story. I never thought about fan films. And at that point, I wasn't really into fan films. I went up there, and the clip is available on our YouTube channel. It was a lot of fun. We had a blast. And just my being an entrepreneur and being a business person, I kind of got involved with them and started helping them when they couldn't finish the episode Katoomba. I basically told James, I said, give me the hard drive with everything and we'll get it finished. And Mark Edward Lewis, who's my partner in Axanar and for the past 11, 12 years, and who is our co-director and editor. He took Katoomba and basically finished it. Got the visual effects done, post-produced it, he did everything. Otherwise, that episode never would have made it. And so it's a great episode. It's really a really good fan film episode. While we were filming the guard scene for Origins, this is 2010, he's like, well, you should write a script and we'll make the episode. I go, wow, okay, great. And got to be good friends with Doc John, who plays Dr. McCoy in New Voyages. And he was dabbling in screenwriting, and we took a screenwriting class with Robert McKee, who's kind of like the godfather of Hollywood screenwriters. Took his 4-day course. It was amazing. And I started writing the script. So this is 2011, and I'm writing the script, and it took me a couple of years to really flesh it out and do all the research. I did a lot of research. I mean, I was reading Honor Harrington books to understand how they, different science fiction, to understand how they handled space battles and stuff. And by the time we did the 2014 Kickstarter, I had a Facebook page for over a year. We had been talking to actors. I got Richard Hatch to commit. I got J.G. Hertzler to commit. I got Gary Graham to commit. We raised $101,000, produced Prelude, released it in 2014, and then used that to we raised $600,000 in Kickstarter for the full-length feature film of Axanar. What happened was I got to be a producer on Renegades, and I got to see how they were doing it. And I really respected, they had a great teaser trailer with Tuvok and Chekhov, and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. No, and they raised hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so I said, if we're going to make this movie, which I think at the time we thought we need like $600,000. I said, we need to prove that we know what we're doing. No one's going to give us $600,000. So we did Prelude, and we did Prelude in a way that we didn't have to build sets. We did it all on green screen. So
before you get into the history of it, let's just clear up producing there. You've been a fan of, it sounds like, all kinds of sci-fi, and you've done a lot of research. You're researching on how it's put together, how it's written, and all of that kind of stuff. Someone's talking to you about acting as well. Take us through the timeline between where the Kickstarters are, where the fundraising is, where Prelude fits into that. In amongst all this research, did you talk to CBS about doing this, and what was your feedback from them?
So in 2010 is my first contact with CBS about guidelines for the fan films. James Coley wanted, he said, oh, CBS, they're not giving us the guidance we really want. We don't really know what we can do. Like, don't sell Star Trek stuff, right? That was kind of about it. And at that point in 2010, no one was using Kickstarter, so that wasn't a thing. So I had my first meeting with CBS around that time, and it was the head of licensing for all CBS, Liz Kolodner. I met with her on the Paramount studio lot. Her and I think it was Mallory or Veronica, one or the other, one of the lawyers on the Paramount lot. I'm like, look, guys, I'm getting involved with these fan films, and at this point, there's no Axanar. I'm like, they want guidelines. What can you do about guidelines? And they're like, oh, we don't know, blah, 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 blah. And then I had another meeting with her in New York. So she was like on the 50th floor of this tower at CBS or whatever. And I had a meeting with Liz Kolodner in her office. And some of that was about the auction that we were doing, but guidelines. I was constantly hitting them up about guidelines. And I worked with John Van Sitters. And during this time where Axanar is germinating, I'm also producing for Star Trek New Voyages, and I'm hitting up CBS like, you need to come out with guidelines, because everyone wanted guidelines, right? This is the thing, the guidelines come out and now everyone's like, oh, guidelines, blah, blah. Hey, everyone wanted the guidelines. We didn't want the draconian bullshit that they came out with. We wanted something more along the lines with like Lucasfilm. But so this is all proceeding. And then in 2013, Liz says, well, I'm going to put you in touch with Bill Burke, who is the head of CBS Consumer Products. And I talked with him, and he said, all right, let me run it up the flagpole, see what I can find out. And then at Star Trek Las Vegas in 2013, he says to me, all right, look, I've run it up the flagpole. He says, there's not going to be any guidelines. He says, it would literally take the CEO of Paramount and the CEO of CBS sitting together in a room doing nothing but talking about fan films, and that's not going to happen. Okay, so that was the official word in 2013. We know that's total bullshit, because 3 years later, they came out with guidelines. And it didn't take the CEOs of the two companies sitting down together. But that was it. And then in December 2013, I had sushi with John Van Sitters, and we talked about Axanar, because at that point I was starting to get things rolling. 2014, March, we do the Kickstarter. May, we shoot Prelude to Axanar, and we release it.
So the Kickstarter, the first Kickstarter 2014 raised how much?
So the Kickstarter in March of 2014 for Prelude to Axanar raised $101,000.
What was your target? What would
$10,000.
Right.
We made that in the first 8 hours. And I tell people, I said, I asked for 10 because I thought I could put in 10 of my own money. I was selling my car. One of my cars, I had a Lotus Esprit, and I was selling that. And I was like, yeah, $20,000. We could probably do this for $20,000. Totally ignorant. I mean, I didn't know anything about what budgeting should be like. This is why I always say we made a lot of mistakes in Axanar. None of the mistakes are the mistakes the haters tell you that we've made. And I'm going to be releasing a video about like the top 10 mistakes we made in Axanar. We're very good about analyzing what we did and didn't do right. But so that was March, $101,000. Ultimately, the financials ended at $125,000. So then we release in late July at Comic-Con, we release the Prelude to Axanar, and that is the video that we use to raise money for the Axanar feature film. We raised $600,000. Part of that's because George Takei got on board on the last day and got an extra $100,000 because of George. God bless him.
Oh my!
And we raised $600,000, and we told everyone, look, we think it's going to cost so much, but we've got to build sets, and we don't know how we're going to do that, and we think we want to get a studio. So we get that money, and that money goes in the bank. We spend the rest of that year figuring out a studio. And I actually found one, and it was, I'm not going to say it was a shithole, but it needed a lot of work. It was outside of an hour outside of LA. They wanted like $2,250 a month, $2,200, which is nothing. And it was like at least 5,000 square feet, the big empty space. But I mean, no amenities at all, like no office space at all. It was just, but I was thinking what Star Trek New Voyages had done with nothing. As a matter of fact, the building that the Star Trek TOS set museum is, which is what came out of Star Trek New Voyages up there in Ticonderoga, New York, I secured that building for. And so I kind of knew where we were going. So I knew kind of how much space we needed. Anyway, we took a visit out to that location, and it was David Gerald, the writer of Trouble with Tribbles, who's a good friend of mine, and my director at the time, and my construction coordinator, and myself. And no one liked it because it was so ghetto. Everyone was like, no, you need to find something better. All right. So we wound up finding a facility. We wound up spending way too much money. Never should have spent this kind of money. I should have taken the money and built a building here in Atlanta on some cheap land. That would have been the best thing possible. Well, we didn't do that. We rented a really nice facility, converted it into a soundstage, built all these amazing sets. The following year, 2015, we filmed the Gavulcan scene. And of course, that's on our YouTube. That's on our YouTube channel. It's also on our webpage, axanar.com. So we shoot the Vulcan scene, release that in conjunction with an Indiegogo campaign, raise another $600,000. So we're now at like over $1.2 million we raised. So we've got all our sets. We're building costumes. You name it. We're signing actors. We're doing the whole nine yards. And this is 2014 now. This is 2015 now. Excuse me. And you can see all. I mean, we had the transporter room, we had corridors, we had a Klingon set, and the bridge. So 2 months before principal photography, even less. I mean, we were shooting for like the middle of February 2016 to start shooting, and we had Starfleet. We had this amazing set that we were going to build for Starfleet headquarters, which was a lot of green screen. December 30th, 2015, we get sued.
So just to summarize then on a timeline, we've had a Kickstarter, we've had Prelude, which is kind of like a proof of concept. Then 2 more crowdfunding efforts, which raised a total of over $1.2 million.
Yep.
And you're doing everything. You're doing sets, you're doing costumes, you're talking to talent and actors. I take it you're looking at cameras and lighting and audio and all of that kind of stuff. I mean, sets like Starfleet headquarters, that's quite an adventurous project to take on in itself. So you're getting all of that going. This is all happening. And then in 2015, you say, they hit you with this lawsuit.
And did that come from nowhere then? Was that completely unexpected?
Yes. So in August of 2015, I call Liz Kolodner up, the head of CBS licensing. I say, Liz, look, we're raising a lot of money. You're not doing Star Trek. Everyone wants us to do this project. We're raising a lot of money. By that time, we had taken the name Star Trek off of Axanar. It was no longer Star Trek Axanar. It was Axanar. I said, look, we're trying, we want to be good citizens here. Can we sit down and talk? And she says, look, John Van Citters and Bill Burke are going to be at Star Trek Las Vegas. Meet with them. That was the first week in August, which was fine because I was doing an auction, a Star Trek auction at Star Trek Las Vegas. So it was fine. So I said, fine. So I meet with Bill Burke and John Van Citters, August of 2015, and we talk. And basically their attitude is, this is all getting out of hand with everyone. They're worried about renegades who's going around saying they're a pilot for Star Trek. And John Van Citters literally said, that's fraud. He said, they're not a pilot for Star Trek. That's fraud. I said, I've been telling that guy that, but he's not listening. And they say, everyone's raising too much money. I go, well, and I said, well, you're not giving us any guidelines. What do you expect? I'm going to push as far as I can go until you say stop, right? I said, give me some guidelines. The famous quote from Bill Burke: we're not going to tell you what you can do, and we're not going to tell you what you can't do, but we'll let you know when you step over the line. I'm coming out of this meeting, and I'm thinking, letting me know I step over the line is, they all have my cell phone in their phone, because I had their cell phones in my phone. They're going to call me and say, Alec, you can't do this. 2, they're going to send me an email. They all got my emails. We're emailing back and forth all the time. They're going to say, okay, we need you to rearrange. Worst case scenario, they send us a cease and desist, right? Now, with the relationship that I've had with CBS for, at this point, over 5 years, I've been a licensee. I volunteered my time to be an archivist. I help them with the Star Trek exhibition from the Hilton. I help them with their, all these. I sold a bunch of assets. I sold Clark's Bar for them. I sold all these different things. You'd think they would pick up the phone and say, Alec, we need you to make some changes, right? Now, if they had come to me and said, we're going to put these guidelines in place and we need you to adhere to them, I would have said, all right, we'll make the changes. We're not going to be able to make a movie. We'll make 2 15-minute episodes, which is what we're doing now, right? If they had come to me and said, we're going to put these guidelines in place, we need you to adhere to them. Because think of it, if they had said that and they said, if Axanar, the biggest name in fan films, comes out and says, hey, we're going to adhere to these brand new guidelines, that would have solved everything. Instead, they had to be, they wanted to be dicks about it. They wanted to shut us down. They literally said they saw the Vulcan scene and realized they couldn't let us make Axanar because it was too good. They said that over and over and on the record. CBS said that to us first after they sued us in May of 2016. We have a settlement conference. Me, my lawyer, her associate on one side of this long table. On the other side, in the center, is Jonathan Anshell, the general counsel of CBS. To the right of him, there's like 3 lawyers from CBS. And then there's a Paramount lawyer and 3 lawyers from Paramount, and Mallory Levitt from New York is on the phone. And we're trying to settle this lawsuit. And they say, and I said to my lawyer, I say to Aaron, Aaron, can I ask a question? Because I've been listening all morning. I say, Jonathan, Star Trek New Voyages and Star Trek Continues replicate Star Trek exactly. It's TOS. They use your font. They use your costumes. They use your characters. They use your sets. They use your music. Everything about them is a replication of the original series Star Trek. We don't use your sets. We don't use your costumes. We don't use your music. We don't do any of that. Yet you're suing us. Why are you suing us and not them? And Jonathan Anshel, the general counsel of CBS, looks to me and says, because no one's going to confuse them for real Star Trek.
Oof.
And I turn to Aaron, and Aaron turns to me and goes, and they repeated that. Their lawyers repeated that to the magistrate judge who had to do our mandatory mediation 6 months later, right before we went to trial. Before you go to trial in California, you have to sit with a magistrate judge who tries to mediate it, right? Because no one wants to go to trial. Everyone wants to settle, except CBS.
At this point, you're trying to exhaust every avenue before it goes in front of a judge.
Yeah, we're like, we don't want to go to trial. We want to settle this with you, but they're just being jerks about it.
Do you think a lot of this is due to the fact that there was no Star Trek at the time, and they were nervous about what they were thinking of was different?
Yes,
with
because
what
at
they
this
were
point,
producing in
Brian
the background.
Fuller is working on Star Trek.
Yeah.
Right? And Brian Fuller then falls out and Alex Kurtzman picks up. But remember, Discovery is, by 2016, Discovery is in process, in production.
Yeah, which is very different from the normal Trek as we would see it, whereas yours wasn't as such.
Alec,
Right.
just to say, before you joined the call, we were just having a bit of a discussion, and Jed said something, and it hit the nail on the head. I think. I think he put it quite bluntly. But what did you say, Jed?
Well, basically, when I first saw Axanar, I actually thought it was a trailer for the next Star Trek because we'd had nothing. We'd had absolutely nothing. And finding out it was a fan-made film, you set the bar really high. And I said, I bet CBS and Paramount sued Alec and his team because it wasn't shit. We didn't have anything. Until we got Axanar, we got nothing. The next minute, we get Discovery, which is in junction with Netflix, and then CBS and Paramount decide the fans are a waste of time and fuck us all over, and then we don't get Discovery in Britain.
Yeah, I mean, that situation that happened was we was at a convention. They were promoting Discovery. They had the stars of Discovery up on the stage doing panel talks. It was a big spot to promote it. And then almost before the conventions ended, CBS has pulled it from British screens. We don't get short treks. We don't get Discovery. We don't get anything. They don't want anything to do with the fans of the show and the people that consume this product. I've got a question before you get any further than, right, we're in this mediation situation before it goes to court. You've actually sat down with these people. You've had meetings in New York. You've run into them at conventions when you're conducting you're transacting your business, and you've caught up with these people. You've gone out of your way time and time again, 3-4 times, to say, where's the line? What can we do? I'm going to do the best job I can. And I'm telling you, it's going to be the best I can possibly do. Is that going to ruffle your feathers? And all that time, you haven't heard no. And then all of a sudden, bang.
Bang, 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 bang.
Lawsuit. You've engaged all the way through this lawsuit as well. That's what you're saying. This mediation before it goes to a judge, you've been in dialogue with these people to try and settle this. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, I was the guy for 5 years pushing the agenda that everyone, listen, whether you were, whoever you were, if you were James Cawley with Star Trek New Voyages, or you were Vic Mignogna with Star Trek Continues, or Sky Conway with Renegades, we all wanted guidelines. Everyone wanted to know what the line was. Because I'm a lawyer, I never practiced, went to law school, passed the bar, and said, enough of this, I'm not interested. But I'm a lawyer, I understand that. And the things I tried to negotiate, tried to talk them through, tried to get it, and they didn't want to do it. And let's face it, it was a lack of will. It wasn't that they couldn't do it, they didn't want to do it. It's the typical corporate mentality. Like, as my friend says, no one in Hollywood ever lost their job by saying no.
Kaz, have you got a question?
Yeah, why did you feel you needed guidelines? It's a separate entity, your work, Axanar. So why did you feel you needed guidelines from them?
Because it's ultimately their intellectual property, right?
Why?
So
None of it was theirs.
But they owned it. They owned it.
They own Star Trek, right?
Yeah, but you weren't doing Star Trek. You were doing Axanar.
Well, I'm using Klingons and I'm using Vulcans and I'm using Garth of Izar. So
right,
you're treading on their IP. Our claim was it was fair use, right? Fair use is a law in the United States which says that under certain circumstances you can use someone else's IP as long as you're not commercializing it, as long as you're changing it, whatever.
But you knew that you'd be trespassing on their IP and you're not the first person to do it, Alec. You're not. On those grounds, you knew you'd be trespassing on their IP. You've got your legal background. You just wanted to know what we say in Britain is where the goalposts are.
Listen, fan fiction is nothing new. Fan fiction has been around for 100 years almost.
Yeah.
It's nothing new. And you look at the way Lucasfilm treats Star Wars fan films, right?
Yeah.
They do give them guidelines. They're soft. They're not public. It's not like there's a publisher, but they they work with them. And like if you're a fan filmmaker, you can get in touch with someone at Lucasfilm and they'll tell you, hey, look, do this, don't do this, whatever.
They do promote it sometimes as well. I think that's great. So that's the way you treat your fan base, and look how that fan base has grown because of that.
It is a basic respect for fandom that Lucasfilm has, and I would argue CBS does not have. The next step is to talk about what a bad business decision it was to sue Axanar. I mean, it is the 50th anniversary of Star Trek in 2016. They're spending their entire year suing their biggest fans rather than embracing us, and they're coming out with Star Trek Beyond. And what is the 50th anniversary of Star Trek known for? Suing Axanar. That's what it's known for. Did they do anything else to celebrate the 50th anniversary of Star Trek? No, hell.
So you're a self-confessed Star Trek fan, and you just said Star Trek's biggest fans. Did you think you were going to hurt Star Trek with this in any way?
No, we were going to help. We're helping Star Trek. You have yet to meet the fan that says, "Oh, this hurts Star Trek." Fans are like, "Oh, the more Star Trek, the better." You can't say we're hurting Star Trek because we're out there promoting Star Trek. As a matter of fact, over the past 10 years, I could be out there talking smack about Kurtzman and what a disaster Discovery was, and this and that. You didn't hear me do that. I have legitimate concerns about Discovery. I love Lower Decks, like Prodigy, love Star Trek, Strange New Worlds. I could be out there talking smack about what assholes they are and what crap Kurtzman. I don't do that. Yeah, you don't hear me do that. I've gone to bat for Kurtzman. Oh, I mean, I did a whole video on defending Kurtzman. Did I ever get a Christmas card from Kurtzman? No, but that's okay. I always say I'm a good citizen of Star Trek, and I want to be. And I think Axanar is meant to be a love letter to Star Trek.
Were you communicating this to the CBS representatives during this mediation before it goes to a judge? I don't want to hurt Star Trek. This is born out of appreciation and admiration. Is that what you were saying to them?
Would you say that if those boundaries had been established right at the beginning when you'd been asking for them, none of this legal mess would have happened because you would have been able to say, look, we are complying with those boundaries that have been agreed? It's those lack of guidelines seem to have caused the issues, and the fact that nobody knew what size or shape the playing field was,
everything if they had just had guidelines, and obviously 5-6 months later, they come out with guidelines. Well, how about coming out with guidelines first, and then when someone breaks them, then you sue them?
I think they've done that on purpose. I think they did that on purpose to see what they looked at the other ones and went, well, these aren't very good. No one's going to confuse this with Trek. And then they finally found one that felt very Trek and went, yeah, no, we're not having this. Let's create some guidelines that he's in breach of now. I think that's exactly what was happening.
Let's limit you now, yeah.
Yeah, just to mention that, I don't think it was necessarily the case that the others weren't good. For example, Star Trek Continues, visually superb, but like you say, you wouldn't confuse it with Star Trek because that's Vic, that's not Shatner. The cast, the crew are clearly different. Continues nails the TOS look and sound, and which is why it is interesting that they weren't sued. And it is interesting to hear the fact that that wouldn't be confused as Star Trek. It is a product that people can consume. So there is an argument surely that hurts Star Trek more so than Axanar, for example, because people can consume it instead of Star Trek, whereas Axanar wasn't replacing anything. You know what I mean? I don't understand how CBS or Paramount would have taken any sort of financial hit from Axanar. If anything, it fueled fandom. It got people excited about it. It didn't. I can't understand.
Just before the release of a major Star Trek product as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's not lost on me that Axanar deals with a period of the Klingon War in that time frame in that look and feel, and the official product that we get straight after that has grabbed the fans' attention and raised a lot of money, and there's dollar signs. I don't think Discovery would have happened as it was in that time frame, looking at that without Axanar. That's my opinion. I think it would have been better for them if it all went away. So at that point in time, you're mediating and you're trying to avoid this lawsuit. Who did they sue, Alec? Was it your company? Was it you personally?
It was me and Axanar Productions. Yeah. So
you personally as well?
Oh yeah. However you want to frame it, they were basically trying to be dicks about it, and then they accused me of using donor funds for myself, and we always joke about for sushi and tires, and because Axanar Productions was my company, and so I was running all my business expenses through Axanar Productions. One of the things I talk about in the video about the 10 mistakes we made was I should have put my own money, because I put in about $200,000 of my own money during that time. I should have put that in a separate account, but it was one account. The donor money was there, my money was there, and so it was all there. And so when they asked for the financials, they're like, well, you're using donor money for yourself. And I'm like, listen, you cannot say that unless you're looking at the source of funds. If I'm putting in, and I think during that time, there was 2016, I put in $100,000 of my own money. I said, yeah, I put in $100,000 of my own money, and I spent it on my stuff. I said that's I can spend it on legitimate business expenses. But they wanted to conflate it all. So what we did during the lawsuit was to said, okay, hold on. And we went back and we took out all of my money and just showed them the donor money, and every single dollar of donor money was spent on Axanar. I never took a dollar for my own expenses. I never took a dollar for a meal or gas or any of that. That came out of Axanar Productions. It didn't come out of donor money. That's two different things.
So I'm going to ask you the direct question. Was donor money ever misappropriated or used for personal expenses? Ever?
No, and we have the proof of that. And not only that, we have two sets of accountants have reviewed it. One set of lawyers has reviewed it. And we got three people we knew in the industry to review the financials themselves. They got everything. And we called it our independent financial review committee. We said, here you go, look at this. If there's anything here that you think is wrong, you let us know. And they came out with a letter and said, no, every dollar you've spent has been according to industry standards.
That's available for people to view, to see that.
Yeah, I put back then, the guy who was running our PR, Mike Borden, didn't want to release the financials to the fans. He said, well, it's just going to, people are just going to misinterpret it like the lawyers did. I said, well, no, I think we should reveal everything. There's nothing to hide. Put it out there. He didn't want to do that, so we didn't. That was a mistake. So I think last year I released the full financials on our website. We're like, oh God, here you go. People are still talking about this shit. The full financials, every dollar. Literally every day. Here's one, and ultimately with money we raised from product like selling T-shirts and stuff, it came out to like $1.43 million, I think. And there's financials. It's 2014, 15, and 16. Boom. I said, you want to come in and audit me? Pay for the audit. You can. I still have every receipt, every statement. It's all there, and I will be buried with that stuff because I will never get rid of that stuff. When you have haters, they just want to. Listen. I'm still dealing with that shit. When we put up our new teaser trailer here, and you still have some asshole going, "Oh, you're a grifter." Based on what? Every single dollar of donor that we took in from donors got spent on stuff. Not only that, over the course of the last 10 years, I've put in, I don't know, $350,000 of my own money. I basically, between CBS suing me and putting in my own money to keep this project alive, I basically, bankrupted myself. They don't want to be proven wrong. They don't want to, the haters don't want to admit that we did it the right way. They would rather cast me as somehow being a grifter, somehow being evil, somehow I screwed everyone. You know what? I don't worry about the haters.
It's like flat earthers. No matter how much proof you show them, real proof, they will just say it's fake or this. You are never, ever going to win that argument, even if you have all the proof in the world. So some people just will not believe that their initial opinion was incorrect.
Alec, this is a really, really personal question, right? But why do so many people hate you? I mean, I know it sounds daft, but the minute your name gets mentioned, or even not just your name, Axanar gets mentioned. I mean, we posted, we've done a video on Axanar, and all of a sudden, it wasn't even Axanar that people were talking about, or it was you. To be fair, the people who do dislike you do tend to love Axanar, though. But what is it? I just don't understand why. So many people.
That's pretty easy because early on, and still to this day, I mean, there's a whole group of haters whose only job is every single day they go on and they attack me, they attack my fiance, they attack, as you know, anyone who supports Axanar gets attacked. They went after Jamie from Sidetrek. They'll go after anybody who supports us.
Yeah,
that's not about me. That's about them. I mean, this guy, one of the guys, I'm not going to mention names, and he's online all day talking shit about people. Another guy, he's just a sadist, and he said, I just like attacking Alec for the entertainment value. This is a guy that flew across the United States from Las Vegas to Atlanta and assaulted me at DragonCon in 2021. Physically assaulted me. 2 years earlier, my girlfriend was physically assaulted by a hater. So they're sick people. At the base level, there's something wrong with someone who needs to spend all their time attacking someone else. Believe me, if Brian Fuller came, who loves Axanar, by the way, loves Prelude to Axanar. Brian Singer. Brian Singer had seen Prelude to Axanar. Oh, Brian Fuller loves it too, by the way. But if Brian Singer said, Alec, you did this wrong and this wrong and this wrong, I would listen to him. If those guys want to criticize me, I am all ears. Come at me, bro. Let me know. I mean, because these are if Alex Kurtzman wants to tell me what's wrong with Axanar, I'll listen. He's a multi-million-dollar successful producer in Hollywood. You may not like his Star Trek, but the guy's got creds, right? It's important to understand who's the audience. Now, you guys got the brunt of the haters' hate, but you know what? Their point. A rounding error to a decimal of a fraction of a point. I've got 40,000 people have just watched our latest update video. We're at, and as far as the teaser trailer, we're over 40,000 people have watched the teaser trailer. 341 comments. I think I've deleted 10 comments. I think.
Me personally, I didn't say anything to anyone to warrant some of the messages that I got. The only thing that I did say was I like Axanar and I like Alec Peters' output as an artist. I think I got 40 messages in an hour.
40 people over and over.
From one person, 40 messages in an hour.
Right. They're really a small minority. They're just a very vocal and noisy minority. That's what you have to understand. I mean, when Scorsese came out and bashed Marvel films, it was like big news because you don't do that if you're a professional. And when you look at those people, they're not doctors and lawyers and successful entrepreneurs and CEOs, and that's not who you're dealing with.
To go back to just your previous comment there about, listening to, these people aren't successful and stuff, because I don't want that comment to be misinterpreted, and I believe it could be. You still listen to your fans, even though the fans aren't, CEOs and Hollywood directors. You do listen to your fans. That's not the point you were trying to make. The point was you can't just listen to the haters saying you're doing something wrong if these people are the small voice. They are the loudest in the room, but they are the minority. That's the point you were trying to make, right? Because it just came across a little bit like your opinions don't matter because you're not a director.
You're a smaller person.
Listen, like someone is like, why are all the ships the same class? All right, that's a good comment. It's a trailer, all right? It's a teaser trailer. We're trying to make a point. If you watched any of our other stuff, if you watch Prelude, it ain't all the same class. We have a whole Starfleet full of ships, right? We got like half a dozen classes there. When you see the Battle of Axanar, if you see we've got all the four classes of ships besides the Ares. We've got Daedalus class hospital ships. We got Markland class destroyers in addition to the four types that we established. We got Vulcan ships. So okay, someone made a point. Why are all the ships the same class? I'll answer that. I'll tell you. Or they say, hey, some people have said, hey, the sound, I can't hear the narration because the sound effects are too loud. And I understand I'm talking to Mark about that, but that's really about your computer. That is because lots of people are hearing it fine. I don't have any problem hearing the voiceover. So I'll address that and say, hey, that's really about your computer. So if you come at me with feedback, I love it. And I always tell people at conventions, you can't out-geek me. Whatever question you have about Star Trek, about canon, about the ships, believe me, we've thought about it. We've thought about all that shit because we're Star Trek geeks, right? So if you have a question, why is it the year 2245? Or why is it? I'll tell you why. Or where's the Enterprise? I'll tell you where. You know, all that stuff we've thought of. And I love talking about this. So when fans ask me questions like that, I'll answer because, as I say, I'm just a fan, right? I'm just like you. I just decided to make a fan film. That's the only difference.
Why did they sue you? Did they sue you because you tried to make money from the Star Trek brand then? Is that what the lawsuit was about? Or why did they sue you?
No, they told it. Like I said, they told us it was too good. They literally said it was too good. That's why we sued you. Now, why they didn't come out with guidelines and ask me to adhere to the guidelines, which is what the settlement obviously ultimately was. So why did you waste? They probably wasted $2 million of legal fees to get me to agree to guidelines that they knew they were making anyway.
What was the concern then? If it was good, what was their concern? How did they think it would hurt them?
You'd have to ask them. Because no one can figure out how it would hurt them.
Yeah.
They didn't want a fan making Star Trek better and cheaper than they were making.
So no one said to you, we don't like the fact that your story touches on these topics. We don't like the content of your films. We don't like the message or the tone of your film.
Never
we
heard
don't
that.
like there was nothing. That's not why they sued you. They didn't say, look, we've got an IP with a message, with a brand, and you're going against that brand. That none of that was said to you.
No.
Okay.
Quality. How did you maintain the quality of the film?
Well, you first of all, you have to commit to, I want to do a fan film that doesn't look like a fan film. And when you make that conscious decision, there's certain things that you have to eliminate. All my friends are not going to be in my fan film. Sorry, you're not actors, right? And now I'm in my fan film. When we were going to make the movie, I was going to recast the role. I was not going to be in the movie.
Really?
No, I literally made the decision that we were going to recast Garth. And honestly, I made it because I couldn't do both producing and acting at the same time.
It was a new ship. They said she was tough. I want to see what she could take.
The producing was taking so much of my time, and it would be better if there was a professional actor doing it, right?
Whose idea was it to do that kind of documentary situation?
That was my idea because that was the easiest way to do a proof of concept, right? That's what Renegades had done. Basically, Renegades had done a teaser trailer with Tuvok and Chekhov on green screen, and it was brilliant. They raised like $90,000 off of that, and so I was like, wow, that's a great way to do it. So yeah. So that was the decision. But getting back to the question about how you maintain quality, so you make the decision. That means you have to follow through with your decision. And like I said, so I'm not casting all my friends. I'm not going to have shitty costumes. I have to have a professional cameraman and a professional gaffer, the lighter. Listen, when they say Star Trek Continues doesn't look like real Star Trek, when CBS says that, what do they mean? They mean the acting. All those fans who are in there, who are having fun making Star Trek fan films, which is like, that's really cool that they're having fun making Star Trek fan films. But you've made a choice. You realize you're making a fan film, which is, there's nothing wrong with that, right? I'm like, go for it. That's great. There's so much. Making Star Trek fan films is so much fun. And we had so much fun when I was at Star Trek New Voyages, as much as I pulled my hair out up there. But we were doing something different. That was our goal. Just like if you saw The Punisher, Dirty Laundry, Adi Shankar made that with Thomas Jane. That looked totally professional. Or when he made he made another fan film of Power Rangers. Looked totally professional, right? You see that stuff. That's because Adi decided I am going to make a professional film. I'm not going to make a fan film. There are things that we're doing that's kind of making us take extra time to do Axanar because we have a certain level of competence that we need to hit.
You're not going to cut corners, basically.
And now our gold standard is Prelude to Axanar.
Yeah.
Right? That's our gold standard now.
You set the benchmark there, yeah. So moving the story on then. So Axanar was sued because it was too good. And you've stated categorically you didn't misappropriate any funds for your own personal sushi and tires thing. How did that lawsuit go? And what have you done since then?
Right. So the lawsuit was settled in 2017, in February 2017. We then moved the studio. We had to move out of the studio because we couldn't afford it anymore. Because basically CBS bankrupted, Axanar. We had basically $250,000 in the account when we were ready, when they sued us. And we spent that trying to keep the place alive, we wanted to then turn it into a money-making studio so we could pay the rent, right? So we moved to Atlanta, August of 2017, started finishing off the bridge set, 2018, and then we started shooting in 2019. So we had our first shoot in October 2019 with a new director who turned out to be a disaster. And then we get hit with COVID. So 2020, COVID shuts down the filmmaking industry for 2020 and 2021. So then we get together and we start shooting, and we have our first shoot now with a new director, Ted Brunetti, who is my acting coach, one of my acting coaches in LA, who was brilliant, top-notch acting coach, one of the best acting coaches in the United States. He was James Gandolfini's acting coach. Studied with Uta Hagen, who's one of the legends of acting coaches. Since we had such a disastrous shoot in 2019 with that director, who I'm not going to name, and I said, Ted, I need you to direct my actors. Don't worry about the camera. I'm going to get Mark Edward Lewis, who's my editor. I'm going to get him to run the camera department. So he'll work with Jeff Fagan, our DP. I said, you focus on the actors. Mark's going to focus on the camera. And so our first shoot like that is November 2022. J.G. Hertzler, Rob Hayes as DeVille, Raj Kala as Commodore Singh. Those three actors on green screen.
What are you shooting at this point in time?
Now we're shooting episodes 4 and 5 of. So basically, after the settlement, good point. After the settlement agreement, we basically said, okay, we can make 2 15-minute episodes. So I took the full-length, 2-hour full-length script and cut it down to a half hour by putting it in the format of Prelude to Axanar. I basically said, we're going to tell the story just like we did Prelude to Axanar. So Prelude to Axanar takes you up to the release of the D7s. We're going to go from the release of the D7s to the peace treaty.
A really quick question. Why is Prelude to Axanar episode 3?
So it's meant as a proof of concept. It was meant to stand alone. There was never supposed to be episodes 1, 2, 4, 5, right? We were just like, we're making a documentary of the war. And being that Rob and I were fans of The World at War, which is the famous BBC series about the Second World War. We were huge fans of that.
The World at War that's narrated by
It's not Olivier, is it? I can't remember. It's a narrator.
No, it's Olivier.
It is Olivier. Yeah. We watched it at school, I think. I used to get play tours at school.
You did, yeah.
Yeah.
So Rob and I were in the editing room, and we were like, we should make this this is one of a series of episodes about this war, right? And that's why everyone says, where's episodes 1 and 2? So we were in the editing room, and we said, oh, let's make it like an episode. And yeah. I said, so episode 4. And I go, no, episode 4, that's A New Hope. That's been episode 3. So we're like, okay, episode 3. So it's the 4 Years' War, episode 3, Prelude to Axanar, right? So it's meant to convey that it's part of this vast documentary series that the Starfleet Historical Society is producing. We just because of the settlement agreement, we then said, let's just revisit that and make episodes 4 and 5. And so people are like, well, where's episodes 1 and 2? I'm like, there is no episodes 1 and 2. And I don't even know what they'd be, because kind of like Prelude to Axanar is kind of episode 1. So when you're done, you'll have a trilogy, these 3 episodes. And
so you've settled, and you've got these guidelines, and now post-COVID, new director, you're shooting the 2 15-minute episodes.
Correct. We have the November shoot. It goes great. And it goes great. Like Mark, before we even start shooting, Mark has in Video Village during the shoot, he's like got Prelude up there, and he's got J.G. Hertzler in the chair that we're about to shoot. And he goes, here you go. And it's like matched perfectly. I go, yes. Thank you. And so that shoot kind of was proof of concept. Also, does this work with Ted being the director of the actors and Mark directing the camera? It worked perfectly. So after that, we have another shoot coming up. And at this point, so this is 2023 now. I guess this was a shoot for Icarus Factor, Icarus Maneuver. And one of my old donors, Dave Lanyon, I just emailed him and said, hey, thanks, thank you for donating. He emails me back. He sends us some money, helps us out a ton. After the shoot, sends us some more money. I like this. I get on the phone with him and we start talking. And we're talking about what we're doing and this and that. Basically, I have the same conversation that we've all had this past hour and a half I'm having with Dave Lanyon, right? The whole history and everything. And he goes, you know what? He says, how much do you need to finish this? And I go, well, at the end, it's going to be, $125,000 or so. And he goes, I'll cover that. And I was so choked up. I like this. I didn't know what to say. I was like, oh my God. I mean, because here's a guy who I don't really know. I never met him at this point. We just talked on the phone, saying he's going to give me $125 to finish our dream project, right? So he comes down for the August shoot, or what was that, September shoot, whatever. Anyway, it's just been this amazing ride with him and his partner, Goodney Goodnison, over in Europe. And basically they do, if you know who Anthony Robbins is? Anthony Robbins is like big motivational speaker here in the United States. Oh. So Dave Lanyon and Goodney Goodison have, they're kind of the same, but they kind of merge that whole pre-performance, personal improvement world with spirituality, like Kabbalah, which is what Madonna follows, and some other thing, yoga, whatever. So they kind of merge that. So they have the school and they do that. Well, the funny thing is, the haters call it a sex cult. Oh, they're a sex cult.
I've been
right.
Right. Because we had to get to this. We had to get to this. We had to.
The sex cult. I keep hearing the minute somebody said, "Oh, Alec Peters, him and his sex cult," I'm like, what? And then I read somebody else refer to you and your sex cult, and I'm like, why is this sex cult? How do I join this sex cult?
Yeah, he spent all Axanar's money on purple dildos.
Purple dildos. Where's the purple dildos come from? Where does
Alec,
that come
come
from?
on, spill it now. We want all the details about this cult immediately.
I've been looking at your bookshelf behind you, trying to see if I can see any purple dildos, and I can't see any.
Yeah, we did have a joke.
There's all sorts of geek stuff here, phasers, and there's a yellow submarine.
I'm going to say I've just seen a yellow submarine. Yeah, I think I've got the same one.
Yeah, don't avoid the question.
Dildos.
Tell us about the cult. Yeah.
Sex cult, yeah.
Where did that come from? Where did that come from?
Someone in their organization had an affair, right? So and the affair was referred to in some article that was written about their school, right? The haters take the affair means they're a sex cult. So
okay.
So the funny thing is, we have a group of fans that follows us on when we do Axanar After Dark, like on our live stream, and they're joking now about that I spend all my money on Warhammer and Sex Toys. So that's like our so I told them I'm going to make a T-shirt, Warhammer and Sex Toys, because this one guy goes, he writes in the comments, Warhammer and Sex Toys, that's my jam. And, and
we don't judge on Shuttlebay 4, Alec. We don't judge. I mean, if that's your thing, man.
But so anyway, ever since Dave Lanyon and Goodney Goodison came on board, we've had all our expenses covered. We haven't had to raise any money. And now everything's, we're in post-production and everything's paid for. And, they're executive producers now, because that's when you're funding something, you become an executive producer like that. That we're just grateful that these guys came on board and did something I couldn't do, which is fund Axanar, which is finish Axanar. We're just very grateful to those two guys. And we're so excited to finish this project now. This past weekend, we just did an insert shot. So we did an insert shot with one of the admirals who was in charge of the Daedalus class hospital ships. We're doing a short film about the Daedalus class hospital ships. We were shooting her. She looked so good. I said, we need to get her into Axanar. So we did an insert shot, put her in Axanar.
Daedalus class of the sphere rather than the saucer at the front. Yeah.
So basically, if you know this ship, reach back.
There it is. Yep.
Yeah, right. So this is the Daedalus class. This is the USS Horizon. You see,
Yep.
right? And so what we did was the Daedalus class was kind of like the workhorse of the Romulan War. We were just thinking, and I was like, it's kind of like the Liberty ships during World War II. So the Liberty ships were the cargo ships that the U.S. produced. We produced like thousands of these ships. It's crazy. And
they were welded together rather than riveted. It cut the production time down to weeks and months, not anything longer than that.
I was always fascinated by them because after the war, we kept like a big stock of them. A lot were turned over to the Merchant Marine, but when I was a kid, you used to be able to drive through Alameda up in Northern California, and there was rows of them in dry dock. And so I was fascinated. I said, what if they did that with the Daedalus class? Because the Romulan War was 80 years before the 4 Years' War. I'm like, what if they put all those in dry dock, and then they took them out to use them? Like, they weren't up for ships of the line. They weren't, but what if they converted them to hospital ships? And the reason I said that was Beverly Crusher's ship in All Good Things.
Yep.
Right. And I said, so obviously, for some reason, that design carried through to hospital ships in the TNG era. So what if the first step was they took all the Daedalus classes out of dry dock and they converted them to hospital ships for the 4 Years' War?
Yeah.
So that's what we did. I think I sent you the patch for that.
Yeah.
So we did that and we introduced them. So then we did a short film about the Daedalus class, and I got so Dave Lanyon and Goodney Goodison and a couple other people got to be in that short film. So that we're going to be releasing that.
That's where you are right now. You're wrapping production. We're not going to get a feature-length film because that goes against the guidelines. So you're stating that categorically. People that put money into the feature-length film and want to see that, your hands are tied by this agreement now with CBS.
Yeah. Well, listen, some donors have given up. They're like, I'm never going to see anything. Okay,
yeah.
Pleasant surprise for you guys. Some people are like, well, I donated for a feature film. You're only giving me 2 30-minute, 15-minute episodes. I'm like, hey, dude, like you said, my hands are tied. CBS said we can't do that. CBS wasted a lot of donor money. Okay, all we can do is this, but it's going to be awesome. So hang back and now reading the comments on our teaser trailer, there are so many people that are so excited to see Axanar. Like whoever it was, you just saw it recently. There are people that are like, I just came across this and I can't believe how Paramount didn't let you guys make Axanar. It's so damn good. So we're real excited. So all the principal photography, 19 actors are in the can, right? That's done. We're now compositing. So a lot of those actors are shot on green screen. We're compositing those. We're incorporating all the visual effects. So the visual effects are all in process right now. Episode 4 has all been prevised. Previs is when you see our shots and you see them black and white, and we're just figuring out what the shot's going to look like. You do that, and then you do all the hard work of rendering that shot, right? But you make sure the director signs off on the shot first before you do all your work. Episode 4 is done. Episode 5, about 50% of the previs is done. And episode 5 is all the battle scenes. So there's a lot of crazy shit.
Episode 4 is titled...
Episode 4 is The Gathering Storm.
And that's followed by episode 5, The Crucible.
And episode 4, The Gathering Storm, is, of course, an homage to Winston Churchill's book of the same name.
Yes.
Right? Because I'm a huge fan of Churchill. Yeah, and if you've been following, if you follow Interlude, which Interlude is there's 3 fan films.
Yeah.
There's Prelude to Axe We Are, which is the animated puppet parody of Prelude, which is, you have to watch it. It's hysterical.
Yeah.
Admiral Remember's speech was certainly memorable. Mostly because he was naked. You don't forget something like that. I've tried.
Then there's Interlude. Interlude was Jonathan Lane, who writes Fan Film Factor, wanted to make a fan film, so he took something out of my script and expanded upon it. And what he expanded upon was I wrote into the script, because Tony Todd didn't want to do the full-length movie.
Why?
One, he wanted too much money, and I said no. let's leave it at that. His agent and I agreed to terms, and then Tony said, no, that's not enough.
Okay.
He couldn't agree to his terms. So we had to write Tony out. We literally write Admiral Ramirez out of the script by saying the Klingons basically tried to assassinate him. That all came from the way the U.S. went after Admiral Yamamoto in World War II, and we shot down his plane over Burma. And I said, "Wow, let's use that as the story for how we get Admiral Ramirez out of the war." Back to production, we're in post production. People are like, "Well, when are you going to release it?" I don't know, because we wanted to release it this summer for the 10th anniversary.
Are they coming together or separately?
Together. We will literally mail all the Blu-rays the week before we release. So everyone should have their Blu-rays, maybe not overseas, and then we'll release the next 2 episodes.
Speaking of the donors then, your aim initially was to make a fan film. It wasn't to make a for-profit studio, a business out of that donor money. That wasn't your aim, or was it?
No, and people say that because we rented a building. And we said, when we're finished with Axanar, we should try and rent this out as a studio to pay the rent, because it had to sign a 3-year lease. We thought we were going to be done in a year. That leaves 2 years. You figure out something to do. So we were like, let's try and make this a for-profit studio so we can pay the rent, basically. But that was it. I mean, no one makes money off. You can't make money. You can't make a living off fan films. So yeah, it was never the idea was never to make money off of it. It was to pay the bills, really, and when we had a $15,000 a month lease. Well, you're spending $15,000 a month on that. It was a 12,000 square foot building. It was beautiful, and we had it set up in great shape. But one way or another, we would have lost it during the COVID, if not when we did. But yeah, so no, we never wanted to make money off of Axanar per se.
I think some people have taken umbrage with the fact that, I say fact, it may not be fact, that the studio that you have now was maybe partly funded through, the Kickstarters. And I think some people are thinking, hang on a minute, you've now got something that can be used for commercial production when it was funded through a Kickstarter.
The studio in LA was funded through the Kickstarter. The studio here in Atlanta was never funded. We never used any Axanar money because the money had run out by then. It was funded at first by Larry from Otherworld Computing had funded the studio for a year, and then the Patreon paid for a good portion of it, but that dwindled off, and then Dave Lanyon came in and he's been paying for it. Yeah. So donors really, outside of the Patreon, we have a Patreon campaign, and so that helped for a while.
So it sounds like an expensive business, Alec, making films in any capacity, fan films or any other kind of film. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying where's the money. But what did you spend it on? Well, I mean, what are your biggest costs?
A lot on the studio. We spent a lot on the sets. The sets were really expensive, and I think through those. And then some people got paid. Rob Burnett was paid to be director for a while. We were paying the crew that was doing the construction. You'd be amazed when you're doing something like this, all the costs you wind up getting. Well, we bought some lighting gear. Well, we do a camera test, and that's why I urge people to go to our website, axanar.com, and to look up the financials, because I got every single page there.
What was the full budget then for Prelude?
For Prelude?
Yeah.
Or
for Prelude.
So Prelude finished out at $125,000.
Yeah.
That included marketing, that included the premiere, that included, a lot of things like that.
The reason I mention it, for context, because obviously that came out in terms of like Discovery, they weren't really that far apart in terms of chronology, of release date. I mean, Discovery is, you're talking about between £8 and £9 million per episode, because the truth is the amount of money that you're talking about is actually very little for a production like this. And I think a lot of people, they're hearing like 1.something million, it's a shit ton of money, and the truth is it really isn't. It's not a lot of money at all for a big production. I know it was 21 minutes, but the truth is it was a tiny budget really for something that was so well produced. And it's not as though you just, like you say, you didn't hire your mates to play these roles. We're talking top acting talent, because when we watched Axanar a few weeks ago, a lot of us had never seen it before. I thought I hadn't seen it before. And it was mind-blowing seeing these big names on screen, Tony Todd, for example, Hertzler, they're not just big names within the Star Trek world, particularly Tony Todd. Tony Todd's a big name, full stop,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, Alec, I've got a question. Actually,
Sure.
Why was it your production, especially the ship scenes, were flawless? The sounds, you could see everything going on. You'd slowed everything right down. It was gorgeous. Where did Discovery, on such a big budget, go so wrong?
Well, without casting aspersions to the VFX crew on Discovery, I think ultimately everything comes from the director or the producer. In that case, high up producer, because you have different directors for every episode. We're Star Trek fans, and we're really geeky Star Trek fans. But we're also Mark and I especially have talked at length about how Star Trek shoots ships, how they shoot space combat. So we came up with our feeling about how we were going to shoot space battles. And the thing that we always talk about is the space lake, right? Star Trek under Rick Berman, everything always happened on the space lake. Like, everything was always facing each other, and they were always you're in space. You could be upside down and coming like this, and it's the same thing.
Oh, the two Klingon ships like that. I can't remember which of the two.
That was an Icarus maneuver.
I had to rewind that and watch it because it's such it goes on for less than a second, this scene. I know it because I ended up slowing it down and zooming in. But that was just insane watching it. I was like, I've got to see that again. And there's that, I think it's Icarus again, where the ship kind of looks like it's going into a stall and comes back on itself. It was just so, we call them Trek tingles. And I know these are unofficial Trek tingles because it wasn't Trek, but that's what we call them. When you watch something and it gives you that, you've got to rewind it kind of feeling.
I think for me, the biggest Trek tingles were from the Klingon ships. So in Prelude, it's watching those, I think it's D6s at the time.
Are you going to go, is that what you're going to do now?
Yeah, the sound effects of the engines, but watching them cruise low in the sky of Arcanus 4, is it? When they've destroyed it and they're just cruising on by. Did you storyboard that? How did you come up with that sequence?
No, a lot of that was just Tobias Richter, the guy doing our VFX.
Really?
Yeah. Now, the one with the two cruisers face each other, I think that was Bill Hunt's idea, one of the guys who was writing on it. I think that was his idea, or it was Rob Burnett's idea. I forget whose idea that was. All the effects in Prelude were, for the most part, not storyboarded. They were basically whatever Tobias wanted to give us. Now, we might say, hey, we need this shot or we need that. But there wasn't a lot of specificity to what we needed. Whereas now, previs is really what's taking the place of storyboarding, right? But getting back to what we said is we just basically wanted to get away from this whole space lake. That's one. Two, we wanted the space battles to not be like Deep Space Nine. As much as I love Deep Space Nine, it's my fave. As much as we loved it, there was just a lot of stuff that just didn't quite make sense. You fire a shot at an Excelsior class and you blow its saucer off. Okay, that's not going to happen. Fortunately, our VFX crews that we have multiple people working on, and us are all Star Trek fans. So we can have those conversations. Unfortunately, Discovery, I'm working my way through season 5 of Discovery just because I feel like I have to. There's stuff in there that's relevant to the timeline. So I gotta, so I watch it. And some of the stuff, I just saw one episode that I really enjoyed. I thought so yeah. So
what is your favorite episode of Star Trek?
There's a couple things. If we're just talking TOS for the moment.
Okay, yeah.
Definitely Doomsday Machine. And it's the special edition. You got to watch the Doomsday Machine in the special edition.
Yeah.
That stuff is really good. They did a really good job with it. And that's
I think there's an episode of Shuttlebay 4 that covers that quite well, actually.
Exactly. I'll tell you, first you start off that episode after the teaser. You start off that episode with Kirk walking around 360 on the bridge, which you only see like twice in the entire original series. That shot's great. I just think that episode is just, the tension is there, the tension between Spock and what's his and William Wyndham's character.
Decker.
Yeah. The tension between the two of them is just awesome. There's just some great episodes of Star Trek. The original series, it's like, I won't fault anyone for saying Mirror, Mirror, or Sitting on the Edge of Forever, or Balance of Terror. Yeah, they're all great episodes. Next Generation, it's yesterday's Enterprise.
Yeah.
The only thing keeping that episode from being perfect is the shitty uniforms for the Enterprise sea crew. It's like, use the Monster Maroons. Don't give me the taking the undershirt out that stupid shit. Other than that episode is perfect.
Oh, no. There's a little mistake at the end where Geordie in the normal universe is still wearing the old cuff, I think.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Good. I will say,
I think you'll find in this episode.
You can.
Yeah.
There's a lot of great scenes in Star Trek, but my favorite scene in Star Trek Next Generation is Picard and Whoopi Goldberg, where Picard goes, "Not good enough, damn it, not good enough," and she's like, "That's all I got," and I'm like, "Holy shit." Yeah. That was so awesome. She's like, "Nope, that's it. You're gonna have to take it as you get it." And I love that scene because it shows like the weight of a temporal issue like that, and you realize that, wow, Guinan's race is kind of special too.
Yeah.
So that's my favorite Next Generation. And then Deep Space Nine. I mean, I don't know how you don't say In the Pale Moonlight.
Oh,
great choice.
It is. I just watched the other day. I watched that final scene with Garak and Sisko so often. You may have just saved the entire Alpha Quadrant. And all it took was the death of one Romulan senator, one criminal, and the self-respect of one Starfleet officer. Holy! Garak is my favorite character in all of Star Trek.
Yes.
He is my favorite character. Somewhere
Really?
around here, I have Garak's tailoring tool. I own that too.
Oh, don't let Sam see that.
Oh my God!
Don't let
Really?
Sam see that.
Yeah.
Right.
So
She'll be flying out. Make sure your address isn't public. She'll be after that.
We've got one. I remember Shuttlebay 4, Sam. She dresses as a Cardassian, and it's absolutely superb. But she's a massive
Cosplay
fan of,
is to die for. It's really, really good, and she's Kardashian obsessed, Garak obsessed as well. Yeah.
Do you think the fact that you really like In the Pale Moonlight and you watch it quite a lot, and the fact that that's a narrated episode as well has influenced you to perhaps go down that narrated route? I personally really like it. I think a lot of the best Star Trek episodes were narrated, and we covered that in a previous episode. But do you think that influenced you to do the narrative style in Axanar? Because that's what I really like about it, because you can tell such a story without spending 200 million on 600 sets, really.
Yeah.
The Prelude to Axanar was based on an episode of MASH, if you're a fan of that show. There's an episode of MASH called The Interview, and in it, it's done as a 50s style newsreel. A reporter comes in and they do a series of interviews with the MASH crew, all obviously in character, and it's not particularly funny. It's very serious, and it gets to the personalities and pathos and just struggles of all the personnel in the MASH 4077, and that was the inspiration for Prelude to Axanar. I was trying to figure out how are we going to do a proof of concept, and I said, let's interview the characters, because we don't have to build sets for that. And that's kind of how that started.
You've got these episodes, they're in post-production, you're getting ready to put them out. Are you proud of them? And what's next?
Yeah. Last month we did a a viewing at the studio on the bridge on the big screen. We did a viewing for about a dozen people, like donors and volunteers, and we showed them the rough cut. And the rough cut has no visual effects. It had some previs. It had no compositing, no sound design, no music. All you had was a bunch of actors, some of them on green screen, and everyone just loved it. Everyone just was like, "Oh my God, this is going to be better than Prelude."
Yeah.
And everyone I've shown it to loves it. We're working our way, towards the finish line, and the finish line is probably 4 or 5 months away.
And what comes after?
We're already working on an Orville fan film.
Oh. Yeah.
And the good news is we've already gotten the heads up from Seth and his crew.
Well, I'm going to say he made his own Star Trek fan.
His own Star Trek fan film.
Exactly. Yeah.
He tells me they're all Axanar fans. We said, this is what we want to do. They were like, oh yeah, give Orville the Axanar treatment. Yes.
Yeah.
Alec, has anyone ever told you that you're a dead ringer for Captain Garth from Prelude to Axanar? You look just like him. No, I don't want to blow smoke up your ass because I hate to be like some sycophantic dick, but I did send this the other day, so I did say it. I don't know if everybody's seen the trailer that you put out very recently, but it is genuinely, of all the trailers I've ever seen for anything Star Trek related, official or unofficial, it's the best one. It's the one that's got me the most fired up to watch something.
Yeah.
I mean, I was pretty excited for Picard when Picard came out, and I wasn't a huge fan of season 1 and 2. But this, honestly, it's really got me excited. But what I did want to ask you is, there's so many rumors at the minute about what's happening with CBS and Paramount in terms of ownership and where Star Trek's going to go and things like that.
Skydance.
Exactly,
yeah. All of that.
I just wondered, do you feel that CBS and Paramount, they own Star Trek, right? It's their baby in that regard. I mean, I kind of think it's bigger than that. It's kind of, once something becomes big as part of pop culture, we all kind of own it. But they legally own it. Do you feel that they are looking after it the way they should be and getting the most out of it? And as a part B to that, if somebody else ends up owning Star Trek or whatever, would you ever be open for them contacting you and saying, hang on, Alec, you've got some good ideas. Would you ever be open for a partnership like that? Because you're not an outsider, if you don't mind me saying. You know people within the industry, and you are a big Star Trek fan. So you kind of bridge the gap in a way.
So in answer to the question A, CBS and Paramount, understanding that Skydance has acquired CBS and Paramount. Skydance now owns the majority of the controlling shares. Paramount Global. They have not merged Skydance with Paramount Global yet. That is subject to regulatory approval. However, let's just take it before Skydance acquired CBS and Paramount. Well, CBS and Paramount are basically a failed business. They have gotten themselves $15 billion in debt for a company that was worth $8 billion. My opinion is that Star Trek has been horribly mismanaged. It's been mismanaged for 30, 40 years. Now, they've done some good stuff. All Star Trek movies are good. I can't argue with any of that. You may or may not like Rick Berman. He did a good job being steward of Star Trek. Okay, we got good Star Trek. Like it or not, the Prime Universe, Enterprise, TOS, TNG, DS9, and Voyager is exceptional. Things like licensing, things like brand management, things like fan engagement, fan film guidelines. CBS was a disaster with all of that stuff. And the problem was, all they care about is money. CBS legendarily said about Star Trek Discovery and the movies, they're saying, well, we don't care about what the fans think. We're not making it for the fans. Meaning they're not going to make a new Star Trek movie for Star Trek fans because it's a not big enough audience, right? That's why JJ Trek was what it was. And that's why I don't bag on JJ Trek. I mean, as uneven as all three movies were, and I happen to like Star Trek Beyond, maybe for other reasons. That's my take on CBS and Paramount. Nothing is a better example of what my opinion is than the fact that they made the huge strategic mistake of suing Axanar when they could have embraced us. Listen, and we have said, we offered to give it to them. We said, let us make it and we'll give it to you. You make all the money off of it. We don't care. That offer was made to the general counsel of CBS, who couldn't understand why we would give it to them. So with us, it was never about making money. Skydance, who's taking over, I have high hopes for them. I've always been impressed with Skydance. I've always been impressed with what David Ellison was doing. His father obviously is a Silicon Valley legend.
I just hope they learn the lesson of engage with your fans, because and in truth, you're not the first person, and I doubt you'll be the last. Well, hopefully the last, if that management is removed, that suffer because of Paramount/CBS. I mean, look at some games. I'm a big gamer. Look at the old style games. You know, the mods that were made for games of the walk around of the Enterprise that was making zero money. In fact, it was costing them loads of money to do. And there was like, no, we can't have that. Absolutely not. No. Full stop. And never gave any really valid reason for it other than you will not do it.
So I think Skydance, there's a lot of opportunity. There's opportunity for fan engagement. I think David Ellison runs Skydance more like a Silicon Valley, company than certainly not a legacy Hollywood studio. So I think the future is really bright for Star Trek. I don't think Kurtzman's going to last. If they ever wanted my input, I would be more than happy to give them my input. I have a lot of respect for Skydance, and I'm really excited about the potential for what's going to happen in the future.
In your heart of hearts, Alec, did you hope that someone connected with this intellectual property would have looked at Axanar and gone, bring that man in here. Bring him in here now.
Of course, that's what you dream about. I mean, just bring Axanar in and put it on your website. You don't have to make a big deal out of it.
Yeah.
Just put it on your website and say, you guys go make it. We'll put it on our website. And we're going to sell all the Blu-rays and make all the money. Fine. That's all that would be a huge, huge win. Instead, they sue us and then they spend the next 10 years lying about us. Their lawyers are, lying about us, saying we're making money off of it and just harassing us. Like, okay, wait, you're small little people when you do that. You're obviously not good business people. How petty and immature and Napoleonic are you guys? I mean, it's absurd. I'm hoping for a new outlook, a new administration, someone who's going to come in and go, we need the fans. We're not going to do everything that the fans say that we should do, but let's have a good relationship. Let's make good products and licensing. Let's make sure that the Star Trek we're putting out is well received. I hope at some point Skydance will reach out and say, hey, Alec, we think you're doing a good job on Axanar. That's all I ask. Call off the lawyers.
Alec, all I can say to you, Alec, you've give basically the fans one of the two wars they've always wanted. You've given us the 4-year war with the Klingons. We was hoping Enterprise would give us the Romulan war.
Yeah.
They didn't. They went down the fucking weirdest, timey, temporal, weird shit anyone had ever seen. But yeah, thank you. That's all I've got to say to you. Thank you for doing what the fans have always wanted. We've always wanted the 4-year war. It's something that's always been mentioned and no one had ever seen. It's like one of my favourite ships is the D7. It was from being a kid. My first episode I ever saw of Star Trek was the Doomsday Machine. I was 5 years of age. My dad stuck it on. It was on BBC Two in this country, and I loved it. I fell in love with it. But the D7 was one of my favourites, and same with Patches. He loves the D7. And basically, Axanar, I've seen more of the D7 in Axanar and the little fan films in between than what I did in the original series.
Yeah, the beginning of the motion picture where you see the D7s in formation. Dan spoke of the Trek Tingles, massive Trek Tingles from that. And you see this muscle ship. We hear the engines, and I keep going on about the sound effects, but they're just... And it's so bassy, and it just adds loads of dimension and weight to the scenes. And at a time that it's been mentioned, when we were in this kind of desert of Star Trek. There was no new Star Trek. There was nothing on the horizon. People were using Google. Is there any new Star Trek coming out? And I've heard some stuff about some films, and this comes out and just give us exactly what we wanted, how we wanted it as well. So yeah, for me, not just for the superb patches, but for the product that is Prelude and the whole Axanar project. I really appreciate everything you've done.
The thing that will tell you that Axanar has hit it big is when that company, the new one that's making Fan Home or whatever they're called, that's making the Star Trek models, when they make a USS Ares model.
Yeah. I mean, I like I've had an Axanar patch on my back for a very long time, and no one from Axanar sent me a cease and desist, and I appreciate that as well. No, I said, get that patch off. We didn't endorse this patch. No, and I hope you agree with what I mean. I'm not expecting you to commit to saying it, but I hope you agree with what Dan says. Nothing has that length of history or that pedigree or that fandom or that phenomenon style thing like Star Trek, in my opinion. Nothing's gone for that long and still has a fan base. We've got members of Shuttlebay 4 that were born long after the original series and still love watching it and still love going over that old stuff. We've got people that, they were stuck during COVID, during the lockdown situation, and they just soaked up season after season of Star Trek and love it. I mean, obviously, the intellectual property belongs to Paramount CBS, probably Skydance very soon. But there is an element of that it's just been part of our culture for so long that you have to appreciate that it's kind of getting away from you a little bit. Like, you can't control every aspect of it.
I just wanted to mirror what Jed said a minute ago when he just said thanks for, being a big part of this and I suppose the driving force behind it. I know there's a big crew behind it and there's loads of other people, but thanks. I just think it's brilliant and I can't wait to see the next 2 episodes, to be honest.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks for taking the time to go through the history, answering some difficult questions. Yeah, I appreciate that too.
I did expect you to stay on for sort of half an hour max, and the fact that you've stayed on for 3 hours and answered every question, that's great. That just shows people you're quite a genuine person. You're an actual fan.
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, totally.
Cheers.
Well, my pleasure. Thanks so much, guys. I appreciate you hosting me.
Cheers, Alec.
Take care.
Live long and prosper.
Live long and prosper.
What a dick.
What nice guy.
Well,
I'm joking.
Well, I think he came across all right, to be honest with you.
You did not see D7s in the motion picture. You saw Katingas. That's a different ship.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
Come on, Patches. I told you this last time.
When I die, on my tombstone, they're going to put Alec Peters, creator of Axanar. That's what it's going to say.